everybody. We've just been dashing around at the last minute trying to sort things out here, which is why we're a little bit late this evening, so I do apologise. Anyway, willkommen, welcome to tonight's Interesting Modelling Code Live. How are you, Mr. P?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine.
Are you well? Yeah, it was a bit of a dash, that wasn't it? We had some last-minute discussions to make on the script that we'd not
only that, but the kettle has just boiled, so I might have to just once you get started, I might have to quickly dash out. Yeah, I know exactly, and my glasses aren't on straight. Unbelievable. Doing an Eric Morecambe here tonight. So anyway, welcome to tonight's program. We have a number of things to get through tonight and some stuff to announce at the end of the show.
Indeed.
So, Mr. P, what have you been up to this week?
I'd like to say I've been inundated with doing lots of things, but I'm still in my planning mode for my next project. And since I finished the Chieftain, feels like 10 days ago now, I really haven't found anything that's really kind of floated my boat too much. I get like this. I get like this every so often. I sort of hit a point. It's a bit like the TV channels. You've got 300 TV channels. You can't find anything you want to watch. It's a bit like that with kits at the moment, and I just can't seem to get anything that really is getting the juices flowing. I started working on a Monogram F4 in the week and sort of did a little bit on that, and then thought, no, I'm not really into this. So I think my next project is likely to be one that we will discuss later this evening.
Well, you said nothing is floating your boat. Let us not forget that floating boats is one of the upcoming challenges that we've got to sort out once we have a hole in our schedules.
Indeed.
Because we're both pretty maxed out at the moment. So
I think it's that, although we're not actually doing it, it's that psychological run-in to scale model world. I think it's kind of...
Yes.
It seems to have taken up over my thought processes, despite the fact we're not going.
Every now and then I keep having this kind of gnawing anxiety that I've got to be doing something. And then it's because this time of year, because we're literally doing this kind of the Telford cram, and then I have to remind myself, no, I'm not doing anything like that. I haven't got anything to rush to get finished for Telford. There is no Telford. The models that I'm working on at the moment, they'll be finished when they're finished. I've not even... we will talk about the Festival of Modelling at the end of the thing, but to be honest with you, apart from kind of carolling the whole thing, I'm not actually doing any demos the weekend anyway, because I'll be too busy running everything in the studio. So I haven't even got that to worry about. All I've got to do is sit here and press buttons. So I don't know what I'm anxious about. I'm not anxious about the festival, because that'll be, not so relatively straightforward. No, it'll be terrifying. But I'm not. There's no point in getting stressed about that, because there's nothing. All I've got to do is plan, and that's it. So why I've still got this kind of, Telford's coming up soon. It's like, no, it isn't.
Yeah, and also, do you remember a couple of weeks ago? It might have even been longer than that. I said that I got this burning desire to scratch build something, because I was a little bit bored of just doing sort of building kits at the moment.
Yeah,
it seems to be coming and going as well. I was even looking at the idea of converting a 16th scale vehicle into a self-propelled gun last night. I was lying there in bed thinking, hey, actually, that would be pretty good. Where are the plans? And then I thought, really? So my head's a little bit all over the place. But I know we all go through this, don't we? When you've come to the end of a group of projects, trying to find something new is often the most difficult part of it. And once you're in it, you're okay. But I keep getting sort of updates as well on previous years leading up to this, where it's shown models being finished, Tamir Tomcats, 24 scale Harriers, all of those kind of things. And I think I haven't got anything on the go at the moment. There is literally nothing on the go.
It is strange. It is strange. Well, I'm almost getting towards the climax of building Drew's Sherman, as it is known as. I'm just doing the final bits and pieces on the running gear, and then it'll be the decals on it, and then that'll be it. I'm conscious of the fact that I feel as though I'm overcooking it again in terms of too many things going on, but you got to do it. You've got to try these ideas and throw things at projects. And if it doesn't quite go exactly how I wanted it, fingers crossed, it is still a perfectly presentable display model. It's just there are things that I'll be looking at. I'll be thinking, yeah, you should have stopped at that stage.
Yeah,
but
I saw that you'd done some chipping today, and that looked very delicate.
Thank you. Well, I'm kind of stealing ideas left, right, and centre from Martin Kovac, because he does a thing with chipping where he actually speckles lighter coloured chips onto the surface of the model. Then he goes in with a paintbrush and then picks them out with a darker colour. So I'm just trying that out. It's not something I usually do. And I also been trying out this whole thing of kind of putting a base colour down, then doing some speckling to break up that uniform surface, and then putting another layer of very kind of translucent, get my teeth in a minute, a very translucent layer of colour over the top, like a glaze, just to blend it all in. Whether it works or not, you got to try it.
Yeah.
Just try it. But it's we said this before, we'll say it again, it is a fabulous kit.
Yeah.
It's utterly fabulous. So let's just say hello to people tonight. So we say hello to Tony McKeown, Dave Fleming, Bradley Chun, Tim Perry, who apparently has a beer. Two Dave Flemings. Well, it's the same person, but I think he just likes posting twice. Mike Williams, Andy Brennan, Ian Goldstraw, Petri Ola, I do apologise. Greg Woodbridge, and Mr. Matthew Whiting. Best behaviour, Mr. Pollard. Best behaviour. Mr. Whiting's watching, and Jen Wright.
Mr. Whiting, is he of the county of Airfix?
He is. Yes, we've got important people watching tonight, so let's be on our best behaviour.
Let's be kind then.
And hello to Jodie as well, and Stuart Bremner. Hello, Stuart. So, okay then,
good.
Let's crack on with tonight's show, and let's kick off with an interesting development, as befits the Interesting Modelling Code. Now, this appeared this week on the Mr. Hobby Facebook page. In fact, they've now geared up a Facebook page pretty much exclusively for European modelers. Thank you, Mr. Hobby. And they're doing two versions of their famous and much loved surfacer, but these will be water-based. And in conjunction with these bottles, they're also doing two water-based sprays. Now, Mr. P, what do we make of that? I mean, first of all,
I'm entirely sure at the moment. I would have to use these and try them out to see how they work. I only use Mr. Surfacer as a kind of a spot kind of repair material. So for fine joints and that kind of thing, I use it for that. I never airbrush it. I don't really paint it in large areas. So for instance, if I'm gluing something together, wings to a fuselage or something, and I can see that there's a tiny little gap there, I would run some Mr. Surfacer over that. I use it also as a material I can sand back to the plastic. And the reason I like it is because it goes rock hard, because of the way it's made. Because of that lacquer base that it has, it goes hard and you can blend it in. Do I think that an aqueous version is going to improve on that? No, I don't. It is the honest answer to that. Do I think that it would suit people who are perhaps going to use that material when they're in, say, the kitchen or the house with the rest of the family, where they don't particularly want the smell of of a lacquer-based product? Yes, I think it's probably a good idea for that, or people who are intolerant to lacquers in terms of any kind of reaction to them.
You mentioned, is it sandable? Because we do have a water-based sandable primer out there at the moment, which is the Stynylres stuff, which has been rebranded by any number of organizations at the moment. So I'm wondering how similar this will be to the Stynylres. I'm with you in as much as I should be buying some. Trust me, the moment this appears, I should be going out and buying some. I'm with you when you say about for people who perhaps don't like using the lacquer stuff, because the one thing I'm thinking is that if this has the same working properties as the lacquer Mr. Surfacer, but it means I can clean a paintbrush up in just a jar of water, that's actually quite a neat advantage. I mean, like you, I don't spray it. I use it for spot checks. I sometimes mix the Mr. Surfacer Black with super glue to make a black super glue compound. That's as far as I use it, and I'm always conscious of the fact that if I'm using a paintbrush, I got to clean the paintbrush out in lacquer thinner.
Yes.
Although, if ever you've got, for those of you who have Mr. Cement, I decanted my Mr. Surfacer into an old Mr. Cement bottle, which then gave me a ready-to-use paintbrush, which is in there all the time. So, but to actually be able to have like a water-based one, so long as you can sand it and it has good adhesion and all those kind of things, that'd be great. I think that's a real boon to the hobby. Like I say, also, I'll be buying it, absolutely.
And also the proof of the pudding, so to speak,
or cake,
or cake, or indeed biscuits, as discussed before we went live. What is the difference likely to be between this product and either a grey or white paint that's already within the aqueous range, the Mr. Hobby range? Is it a different compound? Is it thicker? Is it more resistant? Mr. Hobby must know something about this product. They're not likely to have just retrodden a path that they've already walked down. So I would imagine this is a new product that they're happy to put out on the market that builds on what they've already got there on the racks. I'm certainly open to being convinced, given that I use Gunsanyo products a huge amount on my models. All of my aircraft are all painted with Gunsanyo paints, so it's not like I'm not interested to see what they're like. And having used both the grey and the black Mr. Surfacer and also the Mr. Surfacer primer, I'm very interested to see how these will work.
I'm interested.
It's one of those. I'm open to being convinced.
Yeah, I'm interested to see certainly how these sprays will work, because if they're being advertised as water-based sprays, so yeah, I am sufficiently intrigued. And yes, of course, I'm a fan of Mr. Colour products, because on my trip to Froome the other week, I did bag their last can of Mr. Surfacer Black, and I love this stuff.
Yeah,
but I think it's an interesting development.
I agree. Yes, I agree.
I think it has great potential for people who don't like messing around with lacquers, don't like the smell, don't like the cleanup, don't like sanding them. And apparently Mr. Hobby have got this down for a release date for February 2021. Now, one thing before we leave this topic, one of the things that I did notice, a few comments on this was, it's all well and good, but you won't be able to apply lacquers over aqueous paints. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been applying Mr. Colour lacquer, Tamiya lacquer over Tamiya acrylics, Vallejo acrylics, Guns acrylics. Never had a problem.
No, nor have I.
I don't know where this thing that you can't put lacquers over acrylics come from. Possibly enamels, yes, because they can be enamels and lacquer can be a little bit tricky. But in terms of water-based paints, I've never experienced any issues with lacquers over acrylics. So
no, there used to be that thing as well. This came up when acrylics started to hit the market. You couldn't apply acrylics over enamels or enamels over acrylics. There used to be all of those kind of things. But because there was a non-compatibility between those two products, there was never any problem. And people were able to put enamel washes over acrylic base coats, or acrylic washes over enamel base coats, and there was never any problem. I've never had that, and I've used like you, Tamiya acrylics and Tamiya lacquers, one on top of another without any issues. So there isn't a problem. The only time when that has been a problem over the years is if I've been working with a particular product and not allowed that to dry properly. A car in particular was one that came up where I lacquered it with another type of lacquer, and as it dried out, the underlying layer dried at a different rate to the upper layer, and it cracked everything. So that can happen.
I had something similar. Oh, this is going back nearly 30 years ago. The Monogram A37 Dragonfly, when it came out, and I painted it in the kind of like lizard camo, that grey and green camo. And I decided that I would try to use Humbrol gloss coat, but thin it with lacquer thinner or cellulose thinner at the time. And it went down beautifully up until the point when it actually started eating through and it just crackled all the paint. Stripped it all off. I then did it again, but put it on in much lighter coats, and it worked better the second time around. So that's it. But no, I think
it can happen.
It can happen. But yeah, February next year. So as and when that comes out, we will be giving you a report on that. Personally, I'm optimistic. I'm always the optimist. So
you do like a new product, though. It's something that's a particular fancy of yours. The idea of new products for you to,
because I might just find my next new favorite thing.
Which is a laudable aim.
Absolutely, and I'm supporting the hobby. He said, Saint Jonathan of retail.
I feel ashamed by my lack of support for your obviously righteous endeavours.
Absolutely. Well, my righteous endeavour at the moment is now to go and get a hot drink because my throat's a bit sore. So I'm going to leave you to talk about the next thing, and then I'll join you in a minute or so. So over to you.
Okay. Moving away, we have the 48 scale Folland Gnat. The picture is on the screen. This is what I think is the second release of this kit from Airfix. This is due to be released. It is released now because I have a sample. So you should be getting one of these on the model shop shelves or via pre-order and all of that kind of thing. This is the first time I've taken a look at this kit, so I'm not. I'm sort of not that familiar with it. Although I'm sure I should have seen the initial release, but I didn't. Anyway, this is just arrived. There are options in this kit for 3 RAF aircraft. Those are Central Flying School, Royal Air Force Little Rislington in Gloucestershire, which is an aluminium finish with orange tanks. A Yellow Jacks aircraft from Royal Air Force Valley. That one is obviously overall yellow that you can see here with a black tail. The final one, and the one that I really like, is number 4 Flying Training School, RAF Valley, Anglesey, Wales. That one's really nice. It's in an aluminium finish with signal red tail, wings, and nose. Having had a look at this kit in some detail, it's very typical of the current brand of Airfix kits that have come out over the last couple of years. It's beautifully molded, it's nicely detailed, panel lines and surface detail is delicate and well rendered. It's sensibly broken down. Obviously the Gnat is a very small aeroplane, and this is a very small kit, even in 48 scale, of this aircraft. So you're going to be able to build something that's really compact and really nicely proportioned. There's some great little features in this, though. The cockpit's fully detailed, as you would imagine. The nose bay with all the electronics in, you can have that open to reveal all of the boxes inside there. The canopy can be posed open. The ejection seats are multi-part, including seat straps. And then you've got the decal sheet, which offers all of the markings that we've discussed, but also offers you plenty of stencil data as well. The decals are obviously, we have a dog in this particular fight, but the decals are really nicely designed, and they offer everything that you need for this model. In terms of molding quality, the kit is as clean and tidy as you could wish for from one that's produced in 2020. I really like this model, and so much so that this arrived on Friday, and I had a quick look at it, that I'm planning to have a go at this starting tomorrow. I think I'm gonna build one of these, and perhaps I'm gonna do a Jonathan on this and try and see whether or not I can multi-layer the finish. I'm choosing to do the number 4 FTS aircraft, which is in overall aluminium with the signal red colours on. So I'm going to see whether or not I can get some patina into that aluminium finish, and see whether I can make it a little bit more random and add some interest into it, and maybe do the same thing with the red as well. So this is a very nice new kit, or rather a very nice kit, because as I mentioned, we have seen this already, but this is the new release with the new markings in it. So it's on sale now, and if you're interested in military jets, definitely one to recommend.
I will add a point about the A scheme and the B scheme, and that is that it has to be stressed, these were painted aluminium.
Indeed.
I have seen a number of Gnats that have been finished. Okay, they've been finished to the builder's satisfaction. I always run with that, but they have been finished in natural metal.
Yes.
They're painted aluminium, and actually towards the end of their service life, they started to get really quite dull and quite yucky. Before Dave Fleming, no doubt his fingers are gliding across the keyboard as we speak. Yes, Dave, some of these were later finished in light aircraft grey and signal red, and indeed light aircraft grey and a fluorescent red. And if it seems to be a kind of a real mix between the fluorescent kind of red and signal red. Signal red is actually a really bright color. When you see signal red next to roundel red or post office red or cherry red, whatever you want to call it, they are two different colors completely.
Yes.
Really two different colors. So, but yeah, this is do you know what? This is a very popular kit. It's the 72nd scale one, just, has proved to be very, very popular. And this one, whether it's because of the size, the price, and the color schemes you can wring out of it, whether it's just getting repeat orders, people coming back for another go at it. But I'll get around to building one at some stage. I still haven't yet.
It's in 48 scale. It's not much bigger than a P-51. It's
tiny aeroplane.
Tiny, absolutely tiny. And if you stand next to one in a hangar, anybody that's been to Cosford and had a look at the red arrow that is in there, it is minute when you stand next to it. It's a very, very small aeroplane. It
literally is a gnat.
It literally is.
Literally is a gnat.
Buzzes around your ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to read out some comments here. Jen says the guns accretion paint is nasty. Accretion, right? I think I know what she means. Fair enough, Jen. Mike says that's the third release of the Gnat after initial release of Red Arrows boxing. Indeed, it is. Mike's built his. Mike, if you can dig out the photographs of your Gnat, and we'll put them up on the page because it was absolutely lovely. Surprise! There we go. Dave Fleming, isn't it light aircraft? Light aircraft grey. No, Dave, that one is actually silver, because I looked at the photographs and you can see that slightly kind of metallic patina to the finish. So it definitely is silver. And there we go. Airfix trivia. The Gnat was the first aircraft project that designer went on to do the Hellcat did when he started, scaled up and refined from the 72nd scale one. There you go.
There we are.
Bit of an exclusive for tonight's program there. So
fabulous.
Absolutely. Let's jump back in time now to 1945. And I'll tell you what, if I woke up on Christmas Day and this was in my stocking, it would have to be an exceptionally large stocking, even for my elephantine feet. But it's this. It's the Battle for the Reichstag battle set from Italeri, which looks to be a humongous set, because Oh, well, where do we start? It includes a laser cut facade of the Reichstag building itself, which, as you can see, is over 2 feet wide and a foot tall in 70-second scale, which I think that's really quite remarkable. You also get a T-34-85, which I am going to stick my neck out and guess that is probably the Eschi kit. I've no idea on the provenance of the Russian infantry figures, because Eschi did do a set back in the 70s, so it could be that, or it could be Italeri's own tooling. You get a 8.8 centimeter flak 37. You get the crew. You get German infantry figures. As I say, you also get the MDF laser cut Reichstag building. You get a decal sheet. Not entirely sure about the base, because on the Italeri website, they're showing the made-up model with a very detailed baseboard, but there's no mention in their publicity as to whether it includes a base or not. But I don't know about you, but I think if anybody is out there is looking for something to, a Christmas gift for a younger modeler, and we're going to talk about Christmas gifts tonight, but I honestly, we'll come back to these kind of sets in a second, but that would be my Christmas Day made as a kid if I'd have received that for Christmas.
It really is quite the set, isn't it? I think I'm going to sort of put my neck out and sort of assume that there must be some kind of base to go with it, some sort of vac form base. It would make sense for there to be. But this is like almost the ultimate extension of some of the Airfix and Eschi sets that we grew up with, which had the vac form bases and then a building and then a couple of vehicles and all of that kind of thing. But the idea that the building on it is 2 foot by a foot almost, that's extraordinary. I've not built a 35th scale building that's that big. It really is quite an extraordinary thing, and I agree with you. If you were a small boy, that would be great, wouldn't it?
I've just grabbed a photograph off the Italeri website. Apologies for the format not being quite right for our broadcast, but
yeah, there.
So I'm not entirely sure whether they do give you a baseboard or not, but that does give you an idea of just the sheer vast scope of what you can do with this thing. It's utterly staggering. So that is one to watch out for.
And sorry to talk over you. I'd imagine that somebody already is thinking, I'm going to detail that up and do that as a proper diorama.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned these, and these were the 4 sets that I had as a kid. Actually, pretty much when they came out in about 1974. And I do remember my enterprising artistic mother glued the vac form base of the D-Day British one onto a piece of hardboard, and then she surrounded it with sand and PVA glue and sand, and then painted a seascape, for which I was then able to kind of extend my battles beyond the scope of the kit. But honestly, these were such a big influence on me as a kid, because not only was I getting 2 models in a box, and in one hit, and the figures and the baseboard, but it was the historical blurb they included with it, which told you more about the battles, about the history of the thing, which they were brilliant educational resources. And I know Airfix do the kind of modern day versions of these, but I would dearly love these to actually come back in some form as like a vintage classic in that packaging.
Remind me, were the vehicles the actual kits, or were they the polythene?
No, they were the full on kits. I remember the Churchill driving me mad, because all those separate wheels, aligning them to the axles and everything, it was maddening as a kid. I couldn't cope with that. But of these sets, I never got round to having the Guadalcanal or the Stalingrad ones, but the El Alamein one for the British, that just always stands out as just being exceptional. I just love that to pieces. And kind of going on a few years, you mentioned Eschi. They did a whole series of similar things, which included a vac form base and vehicles. I actually had this one for I think it was my 12th birthday. I think it was about 1979, 1980. And again, just overwhelmed to get 4 kits in a box. It's like, wow, unbelievable. And it has to be said, that white Scout car is a beautiful little kit. Still is. Hopefully I'll get reissued again sometime. And you also had companies like Nitto were doing similar. Now, I think either you or Drew mentioned this the other week, is that their sets were intended to be combined to form one giant battle scene. And it was always hinted at on the boxes of their kits. Up in the top right-hand corner here, you can see what appears to be various scenes being combined together to form like a huge diorama. Yeah. I got to say, as a kid, I think for the same birthday I had the D-Day sets, I also got a Nitto Tiger. Astounding kit because it came with vinyl bits for the air filters and an interior. If you've never seen these Nitto models, they are staggering in terms of the amount of detail they crammed into them. But even as a kid, I looked at that picture up in the top right-hand corner of that diorama, and I remember being especially taken with just how gaudy and unconvincing that was.
Yes.
Yes. Very, very stylistic rather than realistic. And so I say that as I became a student and a fan of Japanese science fiction and monster movies, that becomes a constant, is that realism is not what you're going for. It's a style. I've got some comments coming in here. Tiger Tank is shown but not included on the contents of that Italeri diorama set. That's a good point, Mike. A Tiger Tank is shown. Let's go back and have a look, shall we? No, it's only showing, Mike, on the box and on Italeri's blurb. It's only showing the T-34 because I think we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and find out. There is a link to this. Will be posted up on the Facebook page at the end of the show. So I suggest you all click on the link and go and have a look and see what's going on with that. But just for the building alone, that looks absolutely immense.
We need to speak to our man in the company to ask exactly what's included within.
Absolutely, I'm sure we'll probably get an email or a message before this show ends, giving us some more details. But on a similar theme of things that are good for kids and potentially might make for good Christmas presents.
Indeed, although I think in some ways that maybe does them a slight disservice.
Absolutely.
What we're talking about now is Airfix have added to their vintage classics range, really, but at a later sort of cluster of kits, with the F-16, F8, F-15, F-16 and F-18. Now, these kits were, the F-15 was released in 1978. The F-16 was, the F-18 was released originally in 1981 as a full-scale development aircraft. The box art for this kit, you may remember, had number 3 on the aircraft, which was the one that was white trimmed in blue. And then it was at some point, I think it was retooled to create a more in-service production F-18 Hornet rather than the prototype that featured lurk slots and all of that kind of thing. And then finally, the F-16A, which has been reissued, was originally released in 1982 as an F-16A/B, you may well recall, with featuring one of those awful Airfix boxes with the made-up model sat on a map or a part map or whatever. Just a dreadful piece of marketing that has been consigned to the dustbin of history. So these 3 kits have now appeared once again as a collection. Now they have been seen on and off over the years, but this is the first time that I've been able to take a look at them since the early 80s, when I had a couple of these. I certainly had the F16. I might well have had the F15. The F18, that sort of passed me by a little bit, but it's the first time I've had a look at them. And although these kits and these packages are unashamedly aimed at the younger modeler, I think that they have some things to recommend them, especially if you are of a mind to take a basic kit and try and work some magic on it and elevate it up. I think they sort of run in order. I think the F15 is perhaps the best of the bunch. Then there's the F16 and the F18, which is slightly more simplified. Each of the kits offers 3 individual sets of markings. So you don't get choices like you would in a normal Airfix kit. This offers just one option in each one. The F15 that you see there, this is a Tiger Meat aircraft from Bitburg. But this is a 1981 aircraft, which sort of fits in with its release date, which is quite nice. The second one, the F16A, this one is from Kansas Air National Guard, which has got it's a kind of a really toned down scheme. This one is from 1990. A much later option. And finally, the F18 Hornet is a very kind of stripped back scheme. This one is from the NSAWC Weapons Test Center. As you can see, it's just two-tone grey. It's got some toned down markings on it. Detail across these kits are, and I don't think this is an unfair accusation, it's typical of that era of Airfix kits. So from sort of 78 through to 82, they're what you would see from Airfix at that point. They're nicely molded. There is a reasonable level of detail, especially on the F15. There are areas that are nicely detailed on that, cockpit in particular, undercarriage bays. Inside of undercarriage doors, for instance, have got kind of rivet and panel detail, which is a bit of a surprise. Even to the point where it's got a ladder that drops down from the nose, which came as a bit of a surprise. Panel lines on them are finely raised, as you would imagine. There's no real engraving across any of these. Shapes look good, though. I have to say that I had a look at the F15 and the F16, and they do look like the real aircraft. There isn't anything that jars against them. They look like they've captured the shape well of all of those. They also include a reasonable amount of stores, especially the F16. That includes tanks, bombs, Mavericks, that kind of thing. So they're the kind of thing that would be easy to put together. They're cheap as well. They include obviously the paint and the glues and that kind of thing. I see them as being an interesting for a beginner or for a younger modeler. They're perfect, and because of what they offer, I think that anybody within those groups would certainly find much to enjoy within these kits. For somebody that's a bit more seasoned, they're not going to offer what you would expect from a Scout kit or a latter-day Airfix kit or Tamir kit. Chances are nobody's going to buy an Airfix F16A when they could get a Tamir F16C for a similar kind of price. However, they are the kind of model that you could perhaps create something unique from, add some detail to, work some magic on the color schemes, paintwork, weathering, that kind of thing, and bring them up to scratch. John and I have been working on this all summer, so we've been working on these models from Tamir and Italeri and that kind of thing. These fall within that category. They're not up there with the best you can buy. They're not priced to be up there with the best you can buy. They don't have that kind of complexity. But I think with a bit of TLC and certainly a bit of care and attention, you could create something interesting from this. And whilst I was preparing to do this broadcast, I started to Google images of some of these models made up by people who had done just that. and some of them looked really good. The F-16 and the F-15 in particular looked great. So I'm of a mind at the moment to see what I can do with one or a couple of these kits. I don't think I'll build all three, but the F-15 is definitely one that I like the look of, and definitely one that I think I may see whether I can do something with. And bearing in mind that last week we were talking about this book and the models that were made by Mike Grant from Airfix kits from that era, it seems only sensible that I take my own advice, leaf through one of these books, see how he would have approached one of these models, and see what I can come up with. So I think the best thing to do is to keep an eye on this channel, because whatever happens, I will post these builds onto this channel. But I'd like to see what I can do with these. All three are now available. These have come through as samples. They are here for us to look at and to enjoy. So if you want a challenge, you're looking for something a little bit different, maybe this is the route to go down.
The thing is, there were some comments I read about these which were on the lines of why would I buy that F-15 when I could buy the Great Wall one, or I could buy the Hasegawa one? Well, you wouldn't kind of give a kid a Great Wall F-15 to build, no, even if you got deep enough pockets to go out and give them buy that. There are different stratas of the hobby. There are different needs and different expectations across the hobby. Not at the risk of kind of droning on about this, not everything is enthusiast centric. So there are things, there are kits that are going to be released out there that, and these are starter sets. They come with a paintbrush and paints, very basic paints. They are aimed at a completely different market to people who will go out and buy the Tamiya F-16, the Great Wall F-15, the Academy F-18. So it's, as the phrase goes, horses for courses.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Let's just catch up on some comments here. Mike Reeves says, I will get the Eagle for the markings, but I'm a bit biased. Mike is a bit biased because Mike actually helped out with the markings. So, but I actually helped out with the markings for all three. So thank you, Mike. That was very, very kind of you.
Actually, whilst we've got Mike on the line, given that he's sort of been discussing this, one of the things I did consider with the F-15, because of how simplified it is in places, was to turn it into a prototype. So
there's a thought.
And to rework either into the prototype of that aircraft, or one of the developmental aircraft with the orange trim on. So I think that's the kind of thing that you could do with something simple like that, rather than taking a much more complex kit that's got engraved panel lines all over it that you would have to re-engrave, that you would have to rework. You could convert that into a prototype, or convert it into a full-scale development aircraft and sand it smooth, and still add some detail into it, add a nice color scheme on it, nice paint job, and it would be a lot simpler to do it from a kit like that, rather than something that has all of the production panel lines engraved into it that you're either going to have to re-engrave or fill. So from that point of view, it opens up other possibilities because of its simplicity.
When we get round to doing part 2 of our favourite magazine articles and things, there is a copy of Scale Models that has reviews of what were then the new Revell monogram and Hasegawa kits, and it is just a brilliant article. It's staggering. We'll talk about that another time. We'll talk about that, but it's brilliant stuff. On a similar vein, we're not going to leave these aeroplanes behind. And I know you're all thinking, good Lord, we've had at least 5 minutes there about F-16s, and JM hasn't fallen into a coma. So, love you, F-16 fans. On a similar note, we have 2 new paint sets from Ammo of Miga turned up as well. And they are for US Air Force Aggressors. Now, this set, which is, I'm trying to see what the number is, it's 7234, is for desert and Arctic colors. And they give you some example schemes on the back. Has to be said, I do like that Desert F-15. Doesn't that look absolutely gorgeous? But the set does include matte black, FS 36628 cold grey, FS 30279 light wood, FS 36231 dark gull grey, FS 30140 clay brown, and FS 34079. And the other set that they do is for very similar in vein, but this is for blue Aggressor schemes, which is almost more kind of F-16 oriented. But for this, you get FS 36251 grey, FS 36270 medium grey, 35109 French blue, 36622 grey, 36628 cold grey, and finally 35450 air superiority blue. Again, I would say of the suggested schemes there, and it's not any kind of bias on my part, again, I have to say that the F-15 does look to be a nice scheme. I have a bit of a hit and miss relationship with these Ammo of MiG sets, because I had some of the previous ones that they did, especially one they did, it's actually up here on the shelf here. It was a set they did for British aircraft. And because they try and get one paint and get it to do two jobs, and I notice on here, on the thing here, they have that they describe the 36231 dark gull grey. They've also put it down as BS 638, which I can't remember off the top of my head what that is. You can kind of, if you're going to do colours, even with similar greys, you either do the colour, you know, do it as one colour and not try and kind of turn it into another colour somewhere else. Because as good as the ambition was for the British set, has to be said, the colours are all over the place. They weren't, you know, they were nowhere near as exact as one would like them. But it has to be said, MiG have improved on their colour research and everything for this. And this set certainly, it looks promising. I think we're going to put it through its paces at some stage. One could almost suggest it would be fun to, I was going to say fun to try it out on one of those Airfix starter kits, but they're completely the wrong versions. But an interesting set. Your thoughts, please, Mr. P.
I do think they're interesting sets. I agree with you on the supposition that you can use FS and BS colours side by side, because that often doesn't really work. No. It's a bit like, you know, having extra dark sea grey or dark sea grey and hoping that gunship grey is going to be the equivalent. When you put them side by side, they're obviously completely different. I also appreciate that not everybody is as sort of fundamental about paint matches as perhaps we are, but I've always been of the opinion that when I start a model, I want the colours to be accurate before I start. Especially on an aircraft. With an armoured vehicle, I tend to be less puritanical about it, but certainly on an aircraft, I don't want to use a colour that looks similar. I want to use the actual colour and get it as close as I can. And I've done that over the years. So I would have, you know, I'd like to think that the best way to do this would be to check through these sets. I think that these sets are very useful for people that are, you know, perhaps, you know, wanting to have everything all in one place for a model. The one thing I would say, though, is that unless you're building a cluster of these aircraft, maybe the 3 from the kit, you're going to be buying an awful lot of paint for only one subject. So I would certainly think that it would be recommended to buy these sets if you were going to build more than one aircraft, which I think is, I guess, is likely. Otherwise, you're just going to have lots of boxes full of these things. But I do like them. I think they're very well packaged. I think they're very well presented. I like them as a product. I think that they come through really well. I know that these acrylics are certainly very popular amongst modelers, and certainly very popular amongst modelers on the continent as well, who tend to use less lacquers than.
Yeah, I was going to say we should point out that these are water based. Are they water based or alcohol based? They're not going to be lacquer. They're not going to be hot lacquer based paints.
And this ties in very much with the primer that we mentioned earlier on. Because if you are using one of these, you do need to have a primer base underneath, especially if you're masking over the top of it. These will not stick to plastic anywhere near as well as lacquers, and so you have to operate them in a different way. But yeah, and I like the choices as well. I certainly like the choices of aircraft on the box. They look great. I agree with you. The F-15 is absolutely the one. But then, as I mentioned, I think the other day when Drew got slightly exercised by the concept that the F-15 is the most beautiful aircraft ever to fly. So seeing it in camouflage and not seeing it in 2 shades of compass grey is a very intriguing possibility. I was
just going to say, I think actually being able to get all the colours in one box, especially if somebody wants the colours but then goes to the local model shop and they've got 2 of the colours in but not the other ones in stock on the individual paint racks, I think actually being able to get them as a set is always a bit of a bonus. And again, paint sets are nothing new. Humbrol did this 50 years ago with the Authentics range that they did. They did like a tank set. It was very basic back then. A tank set, which was just desert yellow, olive drab, dark green, something like that. Yeah. So these they're always useful sets, I think.
And having had a look at obviously we've got packaging. We have the samples. Looking on the box, the F-15 only needs the clay brown light wood. The second of the aircraft, the F-16, needs the clay brown light wood and then the green. FS34079, that's dark green, isn't it? It's like a Vietnam green.
Yeah.
And then the final one, dark gold grey, cold grey, and matte black for the Arctic F-16. So in order to get the best from the box, you will be building all three of the aircraft. But I think, like everything, like we were talking about earlier on with the aqueous sets from Gunsanyo, the proof is really in the use with these things, to use them and to see how they would look on a model. And certainly, I would agree with you on that desert, that F-15. That really is sort of getting the juices flowing a little bit to see how that would look. And I think in 48 scale that would look magnificent, wouldn't it, in those 2 colours?
I have to say that I must stop saying that. I must stop saying I have to say. I keep saying that all the time. It has to be said. Use another cliche. It says something for the power of suggestion that a pack of paints can give you. Is up until a few days ago, a desert coloured F-15 hasn't really kind of figured in my modelling crystal ball.
Yeah.
But having seen that and with a set of paints out there, you then think, actually, I want to have a go at that,
Indeed. And also, let's also sort of think that the colours that are offered in this one in particular, the blue colours, a lot of those colours are appropriate to other aircraft as well.
Absolutely.
So it's not as though you're buying colours that will only be applicable to those jets. They're not. You could use these colours on a whole raft of other things as well.
Yeah, Jen Wright has thrown the gauntlet down here. She says, do all 3, these are the Airfix kits, do all 3 as prototypes would make a lovely lineup. There's a thought. And Mr. Whiting is egging on even more by saying, yes, Streak Eagle. Streak Eagle. So, and Mr. Mike Williams has also said Streak Eagle. Dave Fleming has also said Streak Eagle. So
And of course, doing it in that scale from a kit like that, we've all seen conversions of things like Streak Eagle and all that kind of stuff, where they're highly complex conversions because they were very different aeroplanes. But in one of those, you could really hint at it, couldn't you? And then just go for the colours and that kind of thing. 3 prototypes from that, yeah. I'd certainly be interested in doing the Hornet as an FSD aircraft with that blue trim on. Would be beautiful. So yeah, I might give that some thought.
Give that some thought.
Yes.
I'll say we return to the home team again. This is a bit of an Airfix special tonight. See, a mini art free zone, but it's crammed with Airfix.
So we've moved on from our favourite mini art to our other favourite Airfix. So I mentioned this range earlier on, but these are from the Vintage Classics range. And although we've got 2 kits here, these have been released a few months apart, and they are the Hawk City Domini, which you can see on there, and the second one is the Hanley Page Jetstream, which we will discuss a little bit. Rather, John will discuss a little bit further once I've given you sort of an overview of these 2 kits. Firstly, they were released. These 2 kits work well as kind of siblings, really. They were released within a year of each other in 1968 and 1969, according to our records, and have appeared on and off over the years. The first one, the Hawk City Domini, this one is shown in the markings of number 1 Air Navigation School, Stradishall in Suffolk during 1968. That's the colour scheme you see on there. Now, you may well have seen reissues of this aircraft, this kit, with what looks to ostensibly be the same box art, but has been modified. John will tell you a bit more about this later on. But this is essentially the original box art, the original colour scheme for this. The second one is the Hanley Page Jetstream, and this was the newer of the 2, the one that can brag at parties about being the youngest of the brothers. This one here was released in 1969 and includes markings for a C-10A of the United States Air Force, ... And we will explain why that is the case in a few moments. Once again, as with the later 15, 16, and 18 that I mentioned earlier on, the Hanley Page Jetstream and the Domini are almost typical of that era of Airfix kits, and showed why at that point Airfix were gaining so many plaudits from reviewers and from modelers who were buying these kits. Even today, these are nicely molded and actually pretty nicely detailed in places as well. The first one that I took a look at was the Domini. The first thing that surprised me about this was how small this aircraft is. When you see it in 72nd scale, this is not a big jet by any stretch of the imagination. And when you see the fuselage halves of this, this thing is not that much bigger. I'm having a look at it now. It's not that much bigger than a Harrier in 72nd scale. If you put a Harrier next to it, they're about the same length. Obviously, the Domini is deeper and its wingspan is greater, but that gives you an idea of how small this is. It's not a very big model, and in plastic, it's also not a very complex kit either. You can see in here, not a lot of parts to this. As a result of there not being that many pieces to this, it's essentially a curbside kit. It's fuselage halves, the wings. There's a bit of cockpit detail, there's some glazing. There's nothing inside the fuselage of note. Surface detail is typical of the Mark. It's finely raised. This even now, there's very little flash on this model, and it's quite nicely molded. It doesn't look, obviously hasn't been cleaned up. These are just the parts that come out of the mold. And along with the rest of the kits from this range, you get the option of just one set of markings, and that covers the box art. There isn't a second set within this, it's just the box art, which is fine by me because that is a glorious colour scheme for this aircraft before they decided to make training aircraft all black. which looks horrible in my opinion, but looks great. So nice little kit. The Jetstream is 1 year older and shows some progression on the part of Airfix, because unlike the Domini, it includes quite a lot of internal detail. It also gives you the option to open the side door, to have some steps running down from the side door. Inside, it includes bulkheads and what look like canvas seats, for want of a better description, so that when you open up the side door, you can see some seating inside the cabin area. Cockpit detail is in there as well, which includes seats, I think control seats, control wheels, bulkheads. There's no instrument panel in this.
There is no instrument panel.
No,
which is why you don't get an instrument panel decal.
No, there is a coaming that should go over the top of where the instrument panel is, but no instrument panel. But like I say, you get internal seating and that kind of thing. Oddly though, you don't get a floor inside the rear cabin, although you get the seats. The seats seemingly just gluing themselves to the side of the fuselage. But you do get some nice detail. Surface detail is sparse in its nature and delicate in its production, I think is the best thing to say with that. There are some access hatches on the wings, that kind of thing, a few panel lines on the fuselage. But I would be very tempted, if I was to build this model, definitely to do a Mike Grant on this. Add some odd panel lines here and there, and then paint it up in a nice colour scheme, the one that's on the box, and you'd come up with something quite neat and tidy in the same way as you would with the Domini. I don't think I'd go any further than that, really. The odd panel line here and there just to break it up, and then a nice colour scheme. This one accurately reflects what's on the box. So buy this kit and you are getting a Hawker Siddeley Domini T1 in accurate markings. This one, although it says it's a Handley Page Jetstream, it has a picture of an American Jetstream, a C10A, on the box. However, all is not as it seems.
We'll come to that in a second. We're slightly overrunning tonight, but what the heck? Because we're talking about lovely aeroplanes. Spencer mentioned a slight variation in the Domini artwork, and it was very subtle, so subtle that I never really noticed it for years later, and that was around about the mid-1970s. The artwork was slightly changed to a different scheme, which was the College of Air Warfare, and the serial number was also changed. Very skillfully done. So skillfully done that, like I say, I never really noticed the difference. Now, this kit survived into the Palitoy era and even appeared in one of the photo model box tops that everybody loves with such glowing affection. And then it dropped off. Then it dropped off the radar for the best part of 2 decades. It was reissued round about 2004 by Humbrol, and it included markings for a black aircraft of 55 Reserve Squadron, of which there are cabin window differences and a slightly extended nose, but it was felt at the time that just put the scheme in there. If people want to do the modifications, they'll do it. And the secondary scheme was it was a 3FTS 55 Squadron Reserve aircraft in the light aircraft grey, red and white scheme. This is what the decal sheet should have looked like. Unfortunately, it was printed by Heller at the time, and I think some of the colours were so out of register they were still in France. So yeah, exactly. So to get the kit back in 2020 with at least a cartograph printed sheet is nice. It would have been nice to have had extra schemes, but it has to reflect what is on the box. And in this instance, this particular release, when it first came out, it only had the one scheme. It had the one scheme with a choice of serial numbers, but that was it. That was all there was. It is notable that this reissue does also include the grey trim to the red cheek line. It's a small feature that's often overlooked, but it's there on some aircraft. So yes, nice to have that back, because there have only ever been 2 kits of this aircraft. The other one being the Matchbox kit, which has just disappeared into the plastic history. Nobody knows where the tooling is. No. And one would have hoped that if the tooling was still available, that Revell would have reissued it in any years. It's a different engined aircraft. It's a different variant completely, but useful if you wanted to do the later RAF ones. But hey-ho. But again, this kit tends to be kind of issued periodically, almost every 15 years. So if you want to get one, grab it now. Much the same can be said of the Jetstream or the C-10A, which was pretty much last seen in the mid-1970s. Then it wasn't. That was the original boxing. Then it wasn't seen again for the best part of 15 years. Until about 1987, when it turned up in one of those superb photo boxes.
Look at it, just look at
absolutely.
That box.
But then, I mean, there's so much retouching on that. It's hard to tell what's model and what's airbrush. And this is airbrush. This is pre-Photoshop, everybody. This is airbrushing. Then it was reissued about another, 15, 16 years later, around about 2005. As a limited edition club members exclusive, and it literally was just plastic. I don't think it even included any decals. So again, if you want a copy of this, you can probably wait another 15 years. Personally, I don't want to wait until I am 68 to get hold of one of these. And it does come with cartograph decals for the C10 version and color instruction sheet. So if you want one, grab one now. But yes, the story of the C-10A is a rather unhappy one, because the C-10A was seen at the time by Hawker Siddeley as being Hawker Siddeley. Why don't I just call them Hawker Siddeley? Handley Page. It's almost as bad as calling a Hustler a Dominator or whatever it was I did the other week. Handley Page saw the American market as being a likely source of income. So they put together a prototype, the 5th prototype, in fact, of the Jetstream, and it had Garrett TPE 331 engines on there to try and interest the American market on the simple basis that if it had American engines, it would be considered for American service. And the idea was it would be a cargo aeroplane, and it had cargo doors, could accommodate 12 passengers or 6 stretcher cases. Essentially, Jetstream 3M or the C-10A. Now, Airfix at the time were obviously thinking, this could be the next big, like the Canberra, the next big British export success. And rather than do the Jetstream, which was being developed with the French Astazou engines, Airfix decided to go for the American Garrett TPE 331s. And went the whole hog and did their kit as the Jetstream C-3M or the C-10A. Kit was released towards the end of 1969, at which point the Americans cancelled the order. And the C-10A never went any further than that. That was it. End of the line. It as a species, it went extinct. So what you ended up with was a kit, a dodo of an aeroplane in many respects, because over the years, and certainly Humbrol going back 20 years ago, were umming and ahhing about retooling this so that you could do the RAF and the Royal Navy ones, but it is, quite frankly, it's a different aeroplane. Everything you would have to do, wings, engines, fuselage, it literally is a case of jack up windscreen and fit new aeroplane. But, and here's a little bit of trivia that you're all going to enjoy. It was, again, the idea that the US Air Force were going to be buying this thing and it was going to be the next big transport aeroplane was not lost on Century 21 Productions, who in April 1969, when they were filming the pilot episode of UFO, Jerry Anderson's first live-action television series, in the very opening of the program, a jet stream lands at an unspecified airbase where a young Commander Ed Straker exits the aeroplane. You notice there is a bar of a star and bar, and there is Handley Page written on the side. And him and Colonel Henderson get into a Rolls Royce with staggering news contained within a briefcase. So even back then, I think everyone was thinking this is where the jet stream is going to go in the future. It's going to be the next big British success to be sold to the American market. Didn't make it. But so what we have here is, it's probably why it's only ever been sporadically reissued. But it's a very nice kit of a completely redundant version. However, as we've said, and it's one that people often say, why don't you reissue the Jetstream? It's back again. If you really want one, go out and grab this now, and either make it up as a C10, make it up as the one from UFO, or convert it into a Royal Navy or Royal Air Force version. But honestly, if you want to get it, grab it now.
I quite like the idea of doing a what if from that kit based on that. An American, maybe an Air National Guard, a hack or something.
Yeah.
With Air National Guard markings on it or something. That would be quite cool. Because you could do whatever colour schemes you want. You could do ADC grey or something like that, couldn't you? With nice markings on the tail and those kind of things.
Well, there was back in it was either late 80s or early 90s. There was also talk of the US Air Force buying Dominis. And I remember in Flight International, there was an artist's impression of one in that kind of 3-tone kind of lizard scheme that, with low vis markings. But again, that never happened. Although the Domini was a success story for Hawker Siddeley. The Jetstream was a success story for Handley Page. Just the C10 wasn't. It just
a very strange. It's almost a footnote. It's a footnote in aeronautical history. There's also a footnote in Airfix history as well, because they jumped the gun and created something that they lost their American market because there was no aircraft that bore that name, and they lost the British market realistically because it was a kit that wasn't of a version that was being used on these shores. So it's a very strange little footnote story in the history of Airfix.
Yeah, Dave says the Americans did buy some Hawker Siddeley 125s. They did, Dave, but they never kind of. I think it was a slightly different role, and they certainly didn't appear, as far as I can tell, in that kind of lizard Euro camouflage scheme. So HS 225-700s. Let's just Google that for a second and see what we get. I have memories of seeing them in. No, I can't even find images on them here live on the internet, searching for aeroplanes. And yes, I've got one here, but it's just in kind of like it's just in like a civilian scheme. It's not. It's got to be in camo and low vis markings, Dave, to be proper. C29. You get there in the end. He's worse than us. So yeah, that's two very interesting aeroplanes with different stories in terms of their successes. Like I say, Jetstream was successful, but just not that one.
But certainly from the point of view of the kits, it's fabulous to have them back, and it's fabulous that the modelers can have a go at doing these kits. And like I say, the Hella decals were not great, were they?
Yeah, exactly. But right, well, that's pretty much that for tonight. Any other business, Mr. P?
I think we do have some business, don't we, Mr. Mark? We have some business about the Scale Model World Replacement Interesting Model Code Festival of Modelling. I think you've got some information.
We will incur the wrath of people who... Right. We have been working on a schedule of events. Now, this is still open to suggestions. It's still open to change, but we kind of went through various iterations of what we're going to do, because essentially we have an 8-hour broadcasting window, which is what the streaming service allows us. And we thought, well, do we do it in small chunks and have intermissions in between, albeit they're dead air intermissions? We can't be live. We actually have to stop the broadcast, then start up for the next batch, then do that, then stop, then start up. Or do we just do it in one big kind of like long 3-hour chunk, then have a specified intermission, then have another big long chunk, another intermission, and then the evening virtual pub get together bit? So well, this will be going up on the page. The idea is Friday, November the 6th, 7:30 to 10 p.m. will be social night at the virtual bar with guests. Then on Saturday, November the 7th, starting at 10 a.m., running through to 13:30, there will be a rolling program of live modeling demonstrations, kit reviews, and interviews. So that will be continuous for that 3.5-hour period. Then there will be an intermission between 13:30 and 14:30. Then we're back at 14:30 through to 5:30, again with live modeling demos, kit reviews, talk, interviews, you name it. Then there'll be another intermission, and then there'll be a 90-minute social on the Saturday evening with guests. And then Sunday, pretty much a repeat. Start again at 10 o'clock in the morning through to 1:30 with demos, talk, interviews. And we are going to get some people, modelers from around the world will be appearing for chats about their relationship with the hobby and the things they do. Another intermission for lunch and cake. Then at 14:30 to 5:30, much the same again, demos, chat, reviews, stuff, you name it, intermission. And then at 7:30 to 9 o'clock, there will be the 90-minute post-show party. And this will be live streamed, as indeed tonight's show is being live streamed, to Twitter and to YouTube as well. So that's roughly what we've got in mind for the festival. And as I say, we thought it would be better to have it in continuous chunks, so if people are tuning in between the specified times, they're guaranteed to be able to see something. Whereas chances are, if we were to say, look, between 10 and 12 we'll be doing stuff, but there'll be like a 5-minute break in between as we set up the next one, is they'll tune in, they'll go, there's nothing on.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. Let us know what you think of it. Yes, Mr. Reeves, you will be appearing on the show at some stage, the festival at some stage during the weekend, because you are a fascinating and interesting person who has actually worked with real aeroplanes. So indeed, you're in, and we've got a good lineup of modelers for it as well. It's a shame we couldn't cram more in, but as I say, we have an 8-hour window, which has got to include the daytime stuff and the evening get together. So, but you never know. Perhaps the streaming services will start extending that. So that's the rough plan at the moment. Let us know what you think.
Indeed. And of course, there'll be other while we're not, because we're not obviously going to be online. We're as individuals, you will not see our faces for 8 hours a day. That would just be far too appalling a thought. So we'll be working on other things over the weekend. As I mentioned before, I'm hoping to. I think John is sending, or has sent my project for the weekend. So picking something to do.
What was that? Remind me.
The Hetzer.
Oh no, that's going in the post tomorrow.
Yes. So
yeah.
So that's the sort of plan, to build something from start to finish over the weekend, which is putting an awful lot of pressure on me, I have to say. And I've bigged up the possibility of me completing that in 2 days. But there'll be other things as well, and what we would like you to do as well is to give some thought to perhaps showing what you've been working on as well. So
absolutely,
putting your models on there. Get involved if you can. Talk to us. Get involved in terms of asking us questions. Show off your models. Put them in the comments boxes. Do all of those kind of things, because the whole point of this is to bring modelers from around the world together for a show that isn't taking place, but it is taking place on this page and obviously on Twitter and YouTube and that kind of thing. But it's not all about the videos as well. It's about you guys getting involved.
Yeah.
So,
and obviously IPMS UK are also doing a virtual modelling gallery for that weekend as well. So we're not competing with that. Please get involved in that. We're going to be supporting that, and we're going to be doing our best to kind of, you know, support IPMS UK and IPMS around the world as well. So,
you know, and obviously across your feeds, we all follow plenty of you on your personal pages and all of that kind of stuff. Put models up there, get talking, you know, be part and parcel of the whole event for those 2 days. If we can all do that, it's going to be a really good event, and something that's not really been done before. So we're going to try and sort of see how far we can push it. Really.
You see, we started off this show saying about kind of like the still having pre-Telford anxiety, even though there is no Telford. Now you've just said that. No, I'm having pre-Telford anxiety now. So
you need to go and have a beer. That would be a good.
Well,
good
funny enough you say that, because I have a 5-minute gap, and then I'm outside in the freezing cold with my lantern and my candles doing my Sunday night ghost stories for my friends. So talk about glutton for punishment. Right. We've overshot massively tonight, but never mind. It's been great fun as always, Mr. P, and I think we've had a good mix of things tonight. And
indeed, thank you very much.
And I hope everybody's enjoyed it.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for giving up an hour and a half of your time tonight. That's very, 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 very grateful for your patronage.
And to everybody that's out there that's joined us, that's got involved, offered, you know, comments and all of that kind of stuff. Thanks so much for doing that. It does mean a lot to us. When sometimes it can sometimes feel like we're talking to ourselves. So if you have been watching this and you've enjoyed it, then thanks very much for being there.
For those of you wondering when Drew's going to be back, Drew will be back. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm really going to mix up the format a little, because at some stage in the next few weeks, the Sunday show will be hosted by Mr. P and Drew. Oh. I should just be pressing the buttons in the background. Okay. And as and when the Italeri, I was going to write down, don't call it the Italeri Hercules, call it the Zvezda Hercules.
Oh,
when the Zvezda Hercules finally does arrive, we'll be putting out a live program as well in the evening or whenever, which will be Drew and Jen giving their assessment of the kit. So we are going to be kind of, like I say, we're going to be mixing up faces. We also are going to have the 3-person show again with yet another quiz. So that will be coming back. But like I say, we've kind of got it not settled, but we've now got an idea of where we can go with this. So we are going to be kind of changing things around a bit and giving you some fresh faces to look at, frankly.
Indeed. Absolutely.
So on that note, it just remains for me to say, stay safe, stay out of trouble. Please be good, kind, considerate citizens, and we'll see you hopefully on Wednesday for the midweek show. So from myself, take care.
From me, have a great week.
Yeah, look after yourselves, people, and we'll see you very, very soon. Bye for now.